Hey, tonight we're journeying into the American West, but we're leaving the cowboys and gunslingers behind. We're turning our gaze to the figures who are so often footnotes in the story, the women whose lives were a testament to a different kind of grit and survival. We're going to explore the dirty, dangerous, and often desperate jobs that women took to survive in a world that was not built for them. Forget the image of the helpless schoolmarm or the damsel in distress waiting for a hero. The reality for most women on the frontier was a life of relentless labor, profound risk, and quiet, uncelebrated courage. If you enjoy these deep dives into the quieter, often overlooked corners of history, I would be so grateful if you took a moment to like the video or subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely find value in what we do here. Your support helps these stories reach more people. And as always, I love to see where our global community is tuning in from. If you'd like, please leave a comment with your city or country and the current time there. It's a wonderful reminder that we are all connected, listening together in the quiet hours. Now is the time to let the noise of the modern world fade away. Dim the lights, find your most comfortable position, and maybe turn on a fan to create a gentle, steady hum. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and allow your body to grow heavy and relaxed. Let's ease into tonight's journey together, into the world of the women who truly tamed the Wild West. Congratulations, you are a woman on the American frontier in the 1870s. You are not a visitor, not a traveler, you are a homesteader. Your husband, lured by the promise of 160 free acres under the Homestead Act, has brought you here, to the vast, empty plains of Nebraska or Kansas. The good news is, you are a landowner, a participant in the great American dream. The bad news is, the land is not a garden waiting to be planted. It is an adversary, and your life is now a daily, grueling war against the earth itself. You wake before the sun, not to the sound of an alarm, but to the deep, aching cold that has settled into the very marrow of your bones. Your home is not a charming log cabin. On the treeless prairie, wood is more precious than gold. Your home is a small, one-room house, built from the very ground you stand on. The walls are thick bricks of prairie sod, cut by hand and stacked like giant, earthy blocks. The roof is a lattice of scavenged brush and more sod, and the floor is simply the compacted, cold dirt beneath your feet. The soddy is a marvel of desperation, but it is not a sanctuary. In the summer, it is dark, humid, and smells of damp earth and mold. In the winter, the wind finds every crack, whistling through the walls and coating the interior with a fine layer of dust and frost. When it rains, your roof doesn't just leak, it weeps. Muddy water drips onto your bed, into your food, turning your home into a miserable, muddy cave. Snakes, mice, and insects are not visitors. They are your roommates, living within the thick dirt walls and sometimes dropping from the ceiling unexpectedly. Your first task of the day is to fetch water. There is no tap, no plumbing. The well, if you are lucky enough to have one, might be 100 yards away. If not, the nearest creek could be a mile or more. You hoist 2 heavy wooden buckets and begin the first of many long, arduous walks. The water you bring back is often murky, tasting of mud and alkali. It has to be used for everything: drinking, cooking, washing, and watering the few precious animals you might own. You will haul hundreds of pounds of it by hand, every single day. Your shoulders and back will develop a permanent, burning ache that will never truly go away. Breakfast is a simple, monotonous affair. You cook over an open fire or a small, inefficient cast-iron stove that fills your tiny home with smoke. The fuel is not firewood. It is dried buffalo or cow manure, known as chips. Part of your children's daily chore is to wander the prairie, gathering these chips. The smoke they produce is acrid and stings your eyes. You make coffee, boiled with the grounds until it's a bitter sludge. The food is cornbread, salt pork, and whatever vegetables you have managed to coax from your garden. There is no variety. There is only sustenance. Once the men your husband, and perhaps your older sons are out in the fields, your real work begins, and it is a list of tasks so long and so physically demanding it would break most modern people. You are not just a housewife. You are a farmer, a labourer, a manufacturer, and a medic. You tend to the garden, a small patch of cultivated land that is the difference between your family eating or starving through the winter. You fight a constant battle against pests, drought, and the unforgiving climate. You preserve every single thing you harvest. You spend countless hours over a hot stove in the sweltering summer, canning vegetables, drying fruit, and making preserves. Your hands become stained, calloused, and burned. You make your family's clothes from scratch. You card wool, spin it into thread, and weave it into rough, scratchy cloth. You sew every shirt, every pair of pants, every dress by hand, by the dim light of a kerosene lamp late into the night. When clothes rip, you patch them. When they are beyond patching, you turn them into rags, and when they are rags, you use them for quilts. Nothing is ever wasted. You make soap from animal fat and lye, a caustic and dangerous process that can leave you with chemical burns. You make candles from tallow. You churn butter until your arms feel like they are going to fall off. You cook 3 meals a day, from scratch, for a large family of hungry farmhands. You bake bread, you butcher chickens, you milk the cow. The work is not just hard, it is endless. It begins before the sun rises and does not end until long after it has set. There are no weekends, no holidays, no sick days. If your husband has to travel for supplies, a trip that could take days or even weeks, you are left in charge of the homestead. You are utterly alone, miles from the nearest neighbor. You are responsible for the safety of your children, the protection of your livestock, and the running of the entire farm. You learn to handle a rifle. You learn to watch the horizon for signs of trouble, a prairie fire, an approaching storm, or the rare but terrifying possibility of a hostile stranger. The profound isolation is a psychological burden almost as heavy as the physical one. The silence of the prairie can be deafening. Many women, left alone for long stretches, suffered from a deep depression and anxiety that was so common it was given a name, prairie madness. But perhaps the most dangerous job you have as a frontier woman is childbirth. There are no doctors, no hospitals, no sterile environments. You give birth in your dirt-floored soddy, attended by a neighbor or a midwife, if you are lucky enough to have one nearby. More often you are attended only by your husband, or are left completely alone. The process is a terrifying lottery. A healthy birth is a miracle. A complication is a death sentence. A baby in the wrong position, a hemorrhage, a subsequent infection, any of these could kill you. The maternal and infant mortality rates on the frontier were staggering. It is estimated that as many as 1 in 3 women could die from complications related to childbirth. Every pregnancy was a gamble with your own life. You would write letters to your family back east before going into labor, not sure if you would survive to see your own child. You would watch your own children die from diseases that are now easily preventable: diphtheria, measles, whooping cough. You would bury them yourself, in small hand-dug graves on a lonely patch of prairie, and then you would go back to work, because the cows still needed to be milked, and the fields still needed to be tended. Your life is a testament to a kind of endurance that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. It is not a life of adventure. It is a life of grinding, relentless, and often invisible labor. You are the silent, uncelebrated engine of the homestead. Without your work, your resilience, and your sacrifice, the American dream of westward expansion would have collapsed into dust. You are not a damsel in distress. You are a survivor, and your legacy is written not in books, but in the very soil you fought so hard to tame. Let us leave the profound isolation of the prairie homestead and travel to its polar opposite, the chaotic, crowded, and dangerous heart of a western boomtown. This could be a dusty cattle town in Kansas at the end of a long drive, or a muddy mining camp clinging to the side of a mountain in Colorado. Here, fortunes are made and lost overnight, and the air is thick with the scent of whiskey, desperation, and male loneliness. And in this world, another kind of woman fought for survival, in a job that has been deeply romanticized and profoundly misunderstood: the prostitute, known by a host of euphemistic names: the soiled dove, the painted lady, the lady of the evening. Congratulations, you are now one of these women. You are perhaps 18 years old. Forget the myth of the glamorous, independent madam with a heart of gold who controls her own destiny. That was a rare exception. The reality for the vast majority of prostitutes in the Wild West was a life of exploitation, violence, disease, and despair. How did you get here? The path was often a short and brutal one. You might be a young widow from a failed homestead, left with no money and no skills. You might be a recent immigrant, promised a new life in America, only to be abandoned or tricked into servitude. You might be a farm girl who ran away from a life of drudgery or abuse, only to find that the world offered very few respectable ways for a single woman to earn a living. With no social safety net, no family support, and few marketable skills beyond domestic labor, Prostitution was often the last and only option standing between you and starvation. You work in one of several types of establishments. At the bottom of the ladder are the cribs. These are not glamorous brothels. They are tiny, one-room shacks, often just a few feet wide, lined up in a row in the town's red light district. Your crib contains little more than a bed, a wash basin, and a bucket. You work long, grueling hours, seeing dozens of men a day. Your clients are rough, often drunk, and frequently violent. You have no protection. The line between a paid encounter and a brutal assault is perilously thin. A step up from the cribs is the saloon or dance hall. Here, you are a percentage girl. Your job is to persuade cowboys and miners to buy you drinks usually coloured sugar water, for which the saloon charges an exorbitant price, and to pay for dances. You receive a small percentage of the profits. After the dancing and drinking, you are expected to take the men to a room upstairs. The atmosphere is loud, chaotic, and always simmering with potential violence. Fights break out constantly, and you are often caught in the middle. At the very top of the hierarchy are the parlor houses. These are the establishments that gave rise to the romantic myth. They are often run by a madam and cater to the wealthier men in town, the bankers, the ranch owners, the successful merchants. The house is decorated with velvet curtains, plush furniture, and a piano in the parlor. You're expected to be more than just a body. You must be a companion. You must be able to make polite conversation, play cards, and create the illusion of refinement and romance. The clients here may be less overtly brutal, but the exploitation is just as real. You are still a prisoner, living under the strict control of the madam, who often takes the vast majority of your earnings to cover your room and board, keeping you in a state of perpetual debt. Regardless of where you work, your life is governed by a constant, pervasive threat of violence. You are at the mercy of your clients, your pimps, and the madams who control you. You can be beaten for refusing a client, for not earning enough money, or for no reason at all. The law offers you no protection. In fact, lawmen often view you as a criminal yourself, and you are subject to arbitrary arrests, fines, and public humiliation. You are an outcast, a necessary evil in a society dominated by men, but you are afforded none of the rights or protections of a respectable woman. An even more insidious and deadly threat is disease. In an era before antibiotics, venereal diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea were rampant, and they were a death sentence. There was no cure. Syphilis, in its later stages, would attack your nervous system, leading to blindness, paralysis, madness, and a slow, agonizing death. Gonorrhea could lead to sterility, crippling arthritis, and other painful chronic conditions. You know the risks. You see what happens to the other women. You see their health fail, their beauty fade, their minds unravel. But you have no way to protect yourself. To cope with the physical pain, the emotional trauma, and the sheer hopelessness of your situation, you, like many other prostitutes, turn to laudanum, a tincture of opium dissolved in alcohol or morphine. These drugs are cheap, legal, and readily available. They offer a temporary escape, a blessed numbness, but they are also highly addictive. Soon, you are trapped in another cycle, working to earn money not just for your keep, but to feed a growing and desperate addiction. The madam often encourages this, as it makes you more compliant and more dependent on her. You are trapped in a gilded cage, or more often a filthy wooden one. You are surrounded by the noise and chaos of the boomtown, but you are profoundly alone. You are socially ostracized. Respectable women cross the street to avoid you. You are barred from most churches and social gatherings. The dream that you might one day save enough money to escape this life and start anew is a fantasy that grows dimmer with each passing day. The average life expectancy for a prostitute on the frontier was tragically short. Many were dead before they reached the age of 30, taken by disease, violence, or a deliberate overdose. This is the reality behind the myth of the soiled dove. It is not a story of romance or adventure. It is a story of economic exploitation, of physical and emotional trauma, and of a desperate struggle for survival in a world that offered few choices and even less mercy. You are not a romantic figure. You are a casualty of the Wild West, a woman whose life is consumed by the same raw, unregulated forces that built the towns and fortunes around you. Let us now turn our attention to one of the most common, yet almost entirely overlooked, occupations for women in the Wild West. It was a job that required immense physical strength, offered little social status, and was filled with its own unique set of dangers. This was the world of the laundress. In a society filthy with the dust of the trail, the grime of the mines, and the general lack of sanitation, the demand for clean clothes was constant, and it was women who performed this back-breaking, essential labor. Congratulations. You are a laundress in a bustling frontier town in the 1880s. The good news is, you are your own boss. This is one of the very few business enterprises that a woman, particularly a single woman, a widow, or a woman of color, could start with minimal capital. All you needed was a strong back, a few tubs, and access to water. The bad news is, the work is so physically punishing, it has been described as the hardest labor a human can do. Your workday begins before dawn, with the first and most arduous task, hauling water. There is no plumbing, no convenient tap. You must haul every single drop of water you will use for the day from the town well or a nearby river. You carry it in 2 heavy wooden buckets, yoke across your shoulders. A single load of laundry for a group of miners or cowboys requires gallons upon gallons of water. You will make this trip over and over again, your feet sinking into the muddy street, your shoulders and spine screaming in protest. Over time, your body will be permanently marked by this labor, your shoulders stooped, your hands gnarled. Next, you must heat the water. You do this over an open fire outdoors or on a large wood-burning stove. You are constantly feeding the fire, lifting enormous, heavy kettles of boiling water. The risk of a serious burn is constant and severe. A single slip, a moment of distraction, and you could be scalded, an injury that would not only be excruciatingly painful but could also become dangerously infected in this pre-antibiotic era. Your workspace is perpetually filled with thick, choking steam, which irritates your lungs and obscures your vision. Now comes the washing itself. You are not using a gentle, modern detergent. You are using lye soap, a harsh, caustic substance that you often have to make yourself from animal fat and wood ash. The lye is incredibly effective at cutting through the thick grease and grime on the men's work clothes, but it is brutal on your skin. Your hands are submerged in this harsh, hot water for hours on end. The skin on your hands and arms will become red, raw, cracked, and bleeding. The lye will eat away at your flesh, leaving painful sores that never have a chance to properly heal. These open wounds are a constant invitation for infection. The process of washing is a feat of pure physical strength. You dump the filthy clothes-sheavy denim pants caked with mud, flannel shirts stiff with sweat into a large wooden tub. You scrub each item by hand on a ribbed washboard, a process that sends jolts of pain through your wrists and shoulders. You have to wring out the heavy, waterlogged garments by hand, a task that requires a powerful grip and tremendous upper body strength. For particularly stubborn stains, you might have to boil the clothes in a large cauldron, stirring them with a long wooden stick, the steam and lye fumes stinging your eyes and face. After washing and rinsing, the clothes must be dried. There are no convenient electric dryers. You must hang every single heavy, wet item on long clotheslines. In the summer, you contend with the baking sun and sudden dust storms that can coat your freshly cleaned laundry in a new layer of grit. In the winter, you must hang the laundry in the freezing air, where your fingers grow numb and the clothes can freeze solid on the line. You have to bring them inside to thaw by the fire before they can be ironed. Ironing is the final, grueling stage. The irons are not electric. They are heavy wedges of solid metal, known as sedions. You have to heat them on the stove, guessing at the correct temperature. Too cool, and they won't smooth the wrinkles. Too hot, and they will scorch the fabric. You use a damp cloth to test the heat, and you are constantly at risk of burning your hands on the hot metal handles. You work for hours, pressing heavy work pants and shirts, your back aching from bending over the ironing board. You work a 16 to 18-hour day, a relentless cycle of hauling, boiling, scrubbing, hanging, and pressing. Your income is meager. You charge by the piece, and the competition can be stiff. Yet, despite the hardship, this work offers you something precious: independence. As a laundress, you are not dependent on a husband or a pimp. Your business, however humble, is your own. You control your own earnings and your own life, a rare and powerful status for a woman on the frontier. This was a particularly important avenue for African American and Chinese immigrant women who were often excluded from other forms of employment by deep-seated prejudice. The laundry business, while physically brutal, was a space where they could build a livelihood for themselves and their families, creating small pockets of economic autonomy in a society that was actively hostile to them. Your life as a laundress is not one of adventure or glamour. It is a life defined by steam, soap, and sweat. It is a life of constant, grinding physical labor. But in your sore muscles and your raw hands, there is also a story of resilience, entrepreneurship, and a fierce, quiet dignity. You are not just washing clothes. You are washing your own path in the world, one filthy shirt at a time. In the bustling, transient towns of the American West, where single men far outnumbered women and families, there was a desperate need for a place that felt, however remotely, like home. This need gave rise to another crucial and demanding enterprise for women, the running of a boarding house. The woman at the helm of such an establishment, the matron, was not merely a landlord. She was a cook, a cleaner, a financial manager, a mediator, and often a reluctant mother figure to a house full of rough, lonely men. Congratulations, you are now the proprietor of a boarding house in a growing frontier town. Perhaps you are a widow who inherited the property, or perhaps you are an ambitious woman who saved enough money from a previous job, like laundering, to invest in your own business. The good news is, you are a respected figure in the community, a business owner with a tangible asset. The bad news is, your work is a relentless, 24-hour-a-day marathon of domestic labor on an industrial scale. Your day starts long before any of your boarders are awake. You rise in the pre-dawn darkness and head to the kitchen, which is the heart of your operation. Your first task is to get the massive, cast-iron wood stove roaring to life. This stove is a temperamental beast, requiring constant feeding and a practiced hand to maintain an even temperature. You will cook 3 enormous meals a day for anywhere from 10 to 20 hungry men, most of whom perform hard physical labor as miners, loggers, or railroad workers. Their appetites are prodigious. You bake dozens of biscuits, fry mountains of bacon and eggs, and put on a massive pot of coffee. You do all of this from scratch. There are no pre-packaged mixes, no shortcuts. You haul in the firewood, you haul in the water, you knead the dough with your own hands. The kitchen, even in the dead of winter, quickly becomes a sweltering, smoke-filled inferno. Once breakfast is served, and the men have left for the day, your work does not slow down. You must now clean the entire house. This is not a simple matter of tidying up. Your boarders are not known for their cleanliness. They track in mud, dust, and grime. They spit tobacco juice into spittoons that must be emptied and cleaned. Their rooms are small, often shared, and filled with unmade beds, dirty clothes, and the general clutter of men living without domestic supervision. You change the linens, you sweep and scrub the floors, you empty chamber pots, and you battle a constant onslaught of dust and dirt. Then there is the laundry, an endless Sisyphean task. You are responsible for washing the sheets, the towels, and often the personal clothes of all your boarders. This involves the same back-breaking process as that of the professional laundress. Hauling and boiling water, scrubbing with harsh lye soap, wringing out heavy fabrics, and hanging everything to dry. It is a full day's work in itself, but for you, it is just one of many tasks. In the afternoon, you must begin preparations for dinner, which is the main meal of the day. You bake bread, you peel bushels of potatoes, you chop vegetables, you roast huge cuts of meat. You are a caterer, a baker, and a short-order cook all in one. You must also be a savvy financial manager. You have to shop for supplies, haggling with merchants to get the best prices. You have to manage your budget carefully, ensuring that your income from the boarders covers your expenses for food, fuel, and supplies, with enough left over to make a profit. A single miscalculation, a single week of rising food prices, could spell financial ruin. When the men return in the evening, tired, dirty, and often drunk, your role shifts again. You are the enforcer of the house rules. No spitting on the floor, no fighting in the common areas. No loud, drunken carousing late into the night. You have to be firm but diplomatic. You are a lone woman navigating the complex and often volatile dynamics of a house full of rough men. You learn to project an aura of unassailable authority, a no-nonsense demeanor that commands respect. Your physical safety often depends on your ability to diffuse a tense situation with a sharp word or a disapproving glare. You are also, whether you like it or not, a confidant. Lonely men, far from their families, will often unburden themselves to you. They will tell you about their hopes, their fears, their failures. You become a repository for the quiet desperation of the frontier. You listen, you offer a few words of advice, and you maintain a professional distance. knowing that emotional entanglement in this environment is a dangerous and complicated business. After dinner is served and cleaned up, you might finally have a moment to sit down, but the work is not over. There is mending to be done, sheets to be patched, shirts to be darned. There are accounts to be settled. There is planning for the next day's meals. You often fall into bed late at night, your body aching, your mind buzzing with 1,000 details, only to rise a few hours later and do it all over again. The boarding house is your life. It is your prison and your kingdom. It offers you a degree of financial independence and social standing that is rare for a woman of your time. But the price of this independence is your own labor, a relentless, all-consuming torrent of it. You are not merely providing food and shelter, you are creating a fragile bubble of order and domesticity in the heart of the wild, chaotic frontier. You are the unsung architect of community, the silent pillar holding up the social fabric of the town, one hot meal and one clean bed at a time. Let us now consider a profession that was deemed one of the most respectable for a woman in the Wild West, a role that seemed to offer a path of intellectual and moral purpose. This was the life of the frontier schoolteacher. In the burgeoning towns and scattered rural communities of the West, there was a growing demand for education for the children of settlers, and it was women, often young, single, and idealistic, who answered the call. Congratulations! You are a schoolteacher in a remote corner of Montana or Wyoming in the 1880s. You have likely come from the more civilized East, armed with a formal education and a desire to bring knowledge to the wilderness. The good news is, you hold a position of immense respect in your small community. The bad news is, your respectability comes at the cost of your personal freedom, and your job is a daily struggle against isolation, poverty, and the raw elements of the frontier. Your school is not a sturdy brick building. It is a one-room schoolhouse, often hastily constructed from rough-hewn logs or planks. It is poorly insulated, with a leaky roof and a single, pot-bellied stove that provides the only heat. In the winter, the room is freezing cold. You and your students will often huddle around the stove, wearing your coats and hats all day, your fingers too numb to properly hold a piece of chalk. The older boys are responsible for chopping firewood and keeping the stove fed, a task that is as much a part of the curriculum as arithmetic. You are responsible for teaching children of all ages in this single room. Your students might range from 6-year-olds just learning their letters to 16-year-olds who are already seasoned farmhands. You must be a master of multitasking, teaching basic phonics to one group, long division to another, and American history to a third, all at the same time. The resources are pitiful. You may have only a handful of mismatched second-hand textbooks for the entire school. Students often write on slates with chalk, as paper is a precious and expensive commodity. You create your own teaching materials, drawing maps by hand and writing out lessons on a large blackboard. Your salary is meager, and your contract is incredibly restrictive. You are paid by the local school board, which is made up of the very farmers and ranchers whose children you teach. They scrutinize your every move. Your personal life is not your own. You are expected to be a paragon of moral virtue. Your contract likely forbids you from marrying. If you do, you are expected to resign immediately, as a married woman's primary duty is to her own husband and home. You are probably forbidden from keeping company with men. You may be required to be home after 8 p.m. each evening. You are not allowed to loiter in ice cream stores. Your style of dress is dictated. You must attend church every Sunday, and may even be required to teach Sunday school. You live in a fishbowl, constantly watched and judged by the community you serve. You often board out, living with one of the local families in exchange for a portion of your salary. This means you have no private space of your own. You live under their roof, by their rules, eating their food, and constantly under their observation. The isolation can be profound. You are a young, educated woman, often far from your own family and friends, living in a community where your intellectual peers are few and far between. The loneliness can be as biting as the winter wind. The dangers of the frontier are ever present. Your schoolhouse is an island in a vast, wild landscape. A sudden blizzard could trap you and your students for days. You are responsible for their safety. You have to have the foresight to keep a supply of extra food and blankets on hand. Disease is another constant threat. An outbreak of measles, scarlet fever, or influenza could sweep through your small school, and you are the front-line caregiver. You nurse the sick children, you comfort the frightened ones, and you pray that the illness does not claim any of them. You are more than just a teacher. You are a janitor, sweeping the floors and cleaning the outhouse. You are a disciplinarian, dealing with rough farm boys who are sometimes older and bigger than you are. You are a community organizer, planning Christmas pageants and spelling bees that serve as the main social events for the isolated families in your district. Despite the hardships, the low pay, and the restrictive social codes, you find a deep sense of purpose in your work. You are bringing literacy and knowledge to a new generation. You are planting the seeds of civilization in the wilderness. You watch as a child who struggled to write their own name learns to read a book. You see the spark of curiosity ignite in a young mind. These small, quiet victories are your real reward. Your life is not one of adventure in the traditional sense. It is a life of quiet dedication, of intellectual and emotional resilience. You are a forgotten pioneer, one who wielded not a rifle or a plough, but a piece of chalk and a book. You are building the future of the West, one lesson, one child, one cold winter morning at a time. Let us now move to the very edge of respectable society, to a role that existed in the shadow of the United States Army as it expanded its presence across the West. Here, a diverse group of women, known collectively and often dismissively as camp followers, carved out a life that was both dependent on and essential to the military machine. This was a dangerous, transient existence, lived on the literal and social fringes of the frontier. Congratulations. You are now a woman, accompanying a regiment of the U.S. cavalry in the 1870s, stationed at a remote fort in Arizona or the Dakotas. The term camp follower is a broad one, encompassing a wide range of roles and reputations. While it was often used as a euphemism for prostitutes who followed the troops, the reality was far more complex. Many of these women were the legal wives of enlisted men or non-commissioned officers, and many more were officially hired by the army to perform essential domestic services. Let's imagine you are one of these officially sanctioned women, a laundress, hired by a company commander to wash the clothes of his soldiers. You are not a soldier, but your life is governed by military routine and military law. You live at the fort, but not in the main barracks. You reside in a designated area, often a row of rough shacks or tents known as Soapsuds Row. Your living conditions are primitive, crowded, and devoid of privacy. Your work is as grueling as that of any civilian laundress, but with added complications. You have to wash the heavy wool uniforms of an entire company of men. The clothes are filthy with the grime of patrols, horse sweat, and mud. You perform this back-breaking labor under a strict military schedule. Water is often scarce, especially at arid desert outposts, and you are allotted a specific, often inadequate amount. You are paid by the army, a meager but regular wage, which is often supplemented by the soldiers themselves, who pay you directly from their small salaries. Your social position is precarious. You are a civilian in a rigid military hierarchy. While the wives of commissioned officers might create their own small elite social circle, you, as a laundress or the wife of an enlisted man, are at the bottom of the social ladder. You are often viewed with suspicion by the officers' wives, and with a mixture of camaraderie and contempt by the soldiers themselves. You are essential to their comfort, but you are not one of them. Life at a frontier fort is a strange combination of mind-numbing boredom and the constant low-level threat of sudden violence. For weeks or months, nothing might happen. The days are a monotonous cycle of drills, patrols, and chores. The isolation is profound. The fort is a tiny island of American authority in a vast territory that is still the homeland of Native American tribes who are resisting the encroachment of the United States. Then, suddenly, the boredom can be shattered. The bugle will sound, signaling an alert. A patrol might have been attacked. A nearby settlement might be under threat. The men will ride out, and you are left behind with the other women and a skeleton crew of guards, waiting and worrying. You listen for the sound of distant gunfire. You watch the horizon for the dust cloud that signals the patrol's return, praying that they all come back. Sometimes, the danger comes to you. A fort could be besieged, cutting you off from all supplies and communication. You are no longer a non-combatant. You are part of the defense. Women in these situations were expected to melt lead, to make bullets, nurse the wounded, and carry water and ammunition to the men on the firing line. Your life is just as much at risk as any soldier's. If you are the wife of a soldier, your life is even more transient. When the regiment is ordered to a new post, you must pack up your few belongings and follow them. This could mean a grueling journey of hundreds of miles by wagon train, through hostile territory, enduring the same hardships of weather, terrain, and potential attack as the soldiers themselves. You might also serve as a nurse. The post surgeon is often overwhelmed, and women are called upon to assist in the rudimentary post-hospital. You clean wounds, you change bandages, you comfort dying men. You are exposed to all the diseases that sweep through the close quarters of a military barracks: typhoid, dysentery, smallpox. You witness the horrific results of battlefield injuries, performed without proper anesthesia or sterile techniques. Your life as a camp follower is one of contradiction. You are a civilian living a military life. You are a woman in a world of overwhelming masculinity. You perform the most traditional of domestic tasks: washing, cooking, nursing in the most untraditional and dangerous of settings. You are not a hero celebrated in military histories, but your labor and your resilience are the invisible threads that hold the fabric of army life together on the harsh and violent frontier. You live in the shadows of the flag, your survival dependent on the fortunes of an army that sees you as both essential and expendable. Now, we must take a difficult but essential step. We must leave the world of the settlers, the miners, the soldiers, and the town builders, and step into the moccasins of the women whose world they were systematically dismantling. To understand the full scope of dangerous work for women in the West, we must understand the life of a Native American woman during this period of catastrophic change. Her labor was not a job she took. It was the very essence of her culture's survival, and that survival was under direct and relentless assault. Congratulations. It is the 1870s. You are a Lakota woman on the northern plains, or perhaps a Cheyenne, an Apache, or a Nez Perce. You are not an individual seeking opportunity in a new land. You are a member of a sovereign nation, living on the land of your ancestors, a land that is now being overrun. The concept of the Wild West is a foreign one to you. This is not a wilderness to be tamed. It is your home, a sacred and familiar landscape that is now becoming a battleground. Your traditional life is one of incredible skill and demanding labor. You are the center of your family and your community's economic and social life. Your work is not seen as subservient. It is seen as essential and complementary to the work of men. While the men hunt and go to war, you are responsible for almost everything else that sustains your people. Your day begins with the rhythms of your camp. You are an expert architect and engineer. In a matter of hours, you can break down your family's tipi, a sophisticated and portable dwelling you likely made yourself, and pack it onto a travois for travel. You are responsible for setting it up again in a new location, ensuring it is positioned to withstand the wind and weather. You are a master of food production and preservation. You cultivate gardens of corn, beans, and squash. You gather wild berries, roots, and medicinal plants, possessing an encyclopedic knowledge of the local botany passed down through generations of women. When the men bring back a buffalo from a successful hunt, your most intensive work begins. The processing of a single buffalo is a monumental task, and it is entirely your domain. You skin the massive animal with a practiced hand. You butcher the meat, carefully setting aside different cuts for different purposes. You will then spend days or weeks processing every part of the animal. Nothing is wasted. You cut the meat into thin strips and dry it in the sun to make jerky, or you pound it with fat and berries to make pemmican, a high-energy, long-lasting food that will sustain your family through the winter. You tan the hide, a grueling, multi-step process that involves scraping, soaking, stretching, and treating the skin with a mixture of brains and liver to make it soft and pliable. This buckskin is the raw material for almost everything your family wears and uses. You sew every piece of clothing: shirts, leggings, dresses, moccasins using bone awls and animal sinew for thread. You create robes, bags, and the very cover of your tipi. Your skill as a hide worker is a source of great pride and a measure of your status within the community. You are also the primary caregiver for your children, teaching them the traditions, the stories, and the skills they will need to survive. You are a keeper of culture, a storyteller, an artist, decorating clothing and robes with intricate quill work or beadwork that tells the story of your family and your people. This life, while filled with hard labor, is one of dignity, purpose, and deep spiritual connection to the land. But now, this life is under siege. The dangerous work you do is no longer just about sustaining your family. It is about surviving an apocalypse. The encroaching white settlers bring new and terrifying dangers. They bring diseases to which your people have no immunity. Smallpox, measles, cholera sweep through your camps, killing your children and your elders, devastating your community in ways that no enemy warrior ever could. The settlers, the soldiers, and the commercial hunters are systematically destroying your food source. They are slaughtering the buffalo herds by the millions, not for sustenance, but for their hides, leaving the carcasses to rot on the prairie. Every buffalo they kill is a direct assault on your ability to feed, clothe, and shelter your family. You watch as your entire way of life is being deliberately starved into submission. The US Army wages a campaign of total war. They attack your villages, often in the winter when your people are most vulnerable. They do not distinguish between warriors and non-combatants. They burn your tipis, they destroy your food stores, and they kill women and children. Your traditional work now includes the terrifying task of trying to flee with your children during a cavalry charge, of trying to find shelter and food in the dead of winter after your home has been reduced to ashes. When your people are finally forced onto a reservation, your work changes again, but the danger remains. The land you are given is often barren and unsuitable for farming. The government rations you are promised are frequently late, insufficient, or spoiled. You are now forced to perform the back-breaking labor of trying to grow crops in poor soil while watching your family suffer from malnutrition and disease. Your children may be forcibly taken from you and sent to government-run boarding schools hundreds of miles away. At these schools, they are forbidden from speaking their language, practicing their religion, or wearing their traditional clothes. Their hair is cut, their names are changed, and they are taught to be ashamed of who they are. The work of being a mother is now a work of heartbreaking resistance, of trying to keep your culture alive in the hearts of your children, even when you are separated by force. Your life as a native woman in this era is one of constant grinding and heartbreaking labor. You are working not just to survive, but to hold your world together as it is being systematically torn apart. You are a warrior, not with a bow or a rifle, but with a tanning tool, a sewing awl, a digging stick, and an unbreakable spirit. Your story is perhaps the most tragic and the most heroic of all the women of the West, a story of profound resilience in the face of an unimaginable loss. As the deep, quiet darkness of the night settles around you, let us step back from these individual lives of hardship and see the larger picture they create. The story of the American West, as it has so often been told, is a story of men, of cowboys, of soldiers, of miners, of gunslingers. It is a story of conquest, of adventure, of rugged individualism. But tonight, we have walked a different path. We have glimpsed the West through the eyes of its women, and in doing so, we have uncovered a story that is quieter, but infinitely more profound. The women of the West, the homesteader, the prostitute, the laundress, the teacher, the camp follower, and the native woman whose world was being erased, were not side characters in a male drama. They were the essential, unsung architects of a new society. Their labor, in all its diverse, dangerous, and dirty forms, was the very bedrock upon which the West was built. The homesteader did not just make a home, she made agriculture possible, turning barren plains into productive farmland through her relentless, season after season toil. The laundress and the boarding house matron did not just clean and cook, they created the infrastructure of community, the small pockets of order and domesticity that allowed the chaotic boomtowns to function. The teacher did not just teach reading and writing, she planted the seeds of culture and civic life in the most remote corners of the frontier. The prostitute, in her tragic and exploited existence, was nonetheless a part of the complex, often brutal, economic engine that drove westward expansion. The camp follower provided the essential support that allowed the military to operate. And the native woman, in her desperate struggle to hold her family and her culture together, demonstrated a resilience so profound it defies our modern comprehension. Their lives were not defined by glorious moments of adventure, but by a continuum of endurance. They fought their battles not on horseback with a six-shooter, but with a heavy washboard, a sewing needle, a hoe, a piece of chalk, or a buffalo hide scraper. They faced dangers that were both spectacular and mundane. The terror of childbirth in a dirt-floored shack, the slow poison of venereal disease, the grinding poverty, the profound loneliness, the constant threat of violence, and the daily, bone-deep exhaustion of physical labor that never, ever ended. These women have been largely invisible in the grand narrative of the West, their contributions dismissed as domestic or simply ignored altogether. But their work was not domestic, it was foundational. Without their labor, their ingenuity, and their sacrifice, the settlements would have failed, the towns would have collapsed into chaos, and the very project of westward expansion would have been impossible. So tonight, as you rest in the comfort and safety of your modern world, let the old, romantic myths of the Wild West dissolve. Replace them with the image of a woman's chapped and bleeding hands, hauling water from a frozen creek. Picture her face, illuminated by the dim light of a kerosene lamp, as she sews a patch onto her child's only shirt. See her standing firm, a lone woman in a world of men, carving out a life for herself through sheer force of will. Their stories are not ones of fame or fortune. They are quiet, powerful testaments to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. They are the true, forgotten conquerors of the West. Let the memory of their silent, ceaseless labor be a gentle, soothing presence as you drift into sleep. Let the quiet rhythm of their forgotten lives be the lullaby that carries you through the night. Sleep now, and remember them.